Well, whether or not you watched the Academy Awards on Sunday night, it is more than likely that you heard something about it on Monday. The event that hit the headlines was a terrible moment between the comedian Chris Rock and the actor Will Smith. Chris Rock made a joke mocking Jada Pinkett's medical condition that caused her to shave her head. After some nervous laughter, Will Smith, who's married to Jada, walked up on stage and slapped Rock and shouted at him to keep her name out of his mouth, including an obscenity or two for good measure. And the laughs became stunned silence, and nobody was taking the joke anymore. Later in the telecast, Will Smith apologized for his actions. The Academy has opened an inquiry into the incident. Mr. Smith apologized to Mr. Rock and the world on Monday evening via Instagram and then has since resigned from the Academy. And many people have expressed support and outrage of various kinds. And that's the top layer of the story. However, there are layers and layers of context and private and personal and public histories that led to the moment in question. Roxane Gay wrote a piece for the New York Times in which she said, "I'm trying to hold space for all the layers. Ms. Pinkett Smith's exhaustion at being a target of humor, Mr. Smith's series of bad decisions, Mr. Rock's trying to maintain his composure in the immediate aftermath of being a target of violence. Unfortunately, the incident has become something of a Rorschach test onto which people are projecting their backgrounds, their opinions, and affinities. And what gets lost in the discourse is that however disappointing the incident was, it was a rare moment when a Black woman was publicly defended. And she went on to examine the treatment that Judge Ketetni Brown Jackson endured during the recent confirmation hearings of the Supreme Court, and pondered the kind of world in which we live, where people are asked and even required to have a thick skin. This Lent, we've been considering differences and how we engage with one another in all of our differences. And what is clear to me is that in general, we're not doing all that well with it. We are much more practiced at being cruel to one another than kind. We can see that in most spheres of life these days. We excuse meanness in many of our leaders. We require people to be tough and strong, even hardened. And then we seem to revel in our ability to take down people if we decide it is warranted. And many of us treat those closest to us more poorly than we treat strangers or those out in public, with the excuse that we shouldn't have to use effort with our families. They love us anyway. And even if we're not trying to be callous or cruel, we are not practiced at being considerate. We easily assume that our needs are the same as everyone else's. We get distracted by what we want and have trouble imagining or understanding when someone else wants something different. And yet, here we are, reminding ourselves that as followers of Jesus, our call is to love one another. Not love them as is convenient for us, but love them how they need to be loved. Today's Bible story is likely familiar to you. It's part of the story, the larger story from the last days of Jesus' life. And most of us, if we knew we were in danger and likely to die soon, might, understandably, be focused on our own needs. But in this story, Jesus is concerned about what his followers need. So he does something very confusing to them. He performs the task of a servant in their culture. He literally lowers himself to show that love is about letting go of control and caring for the needs of others. And even more astounding is that he does so likely knowing that they will all fail him miserably in his hour of greatest need. He does so deliberately. This is not the same as letting people treat you poorly, being a doormat. This is a conscious choice as a person with some power in the room to consider the needs of others in the name of love. And then he says, now here's the new commandment. You know you're supposed to love. I say, love the way I have loved you. It's not as easy to do as it is to say, because we all know how easy it is for us to get distracted by our needs and our desires and our wishes. It's so hard to imagine that other people might need other stuff. And this is where the teaching of the Enneagram behind me can be particularly helpful, I've found. For example, one of the things that the Enneagram taught me that I found particularly useful is something that is called the harmonic groups. You don't have to remember the name. But it divides up the numbers into 3 different groups and indicates how each person copes with something when they don't get what they want. They reveal the fundamental way that our personality defends against loss or disappointment. And it turns out we are not all the same in this regard. Some of us respond to conflict and difficulty by adopting as much as possible a positive attitude, reframing disappointment in a positive way. They want to see the bright side in the disappointment. Some of us, instead, react emotionally to problems and have difficulty then in those moments trusting or knowing how to trust other people. So when problems arise, these people look for an emotional response from others that mirrors their concern. This is really bothering me. It should also bother you. And then there is this third group who want to put aside their personal feelings and just figure out what the next logical step is. And they expect others to do the same. You might easily know which group you fit in. Maybe not. Here's how they fit with the Enneagram numbers, if this helps you. The positive outlook group will deny that they have any problems. So 9s might say, what problem? I don't see a problem here. I don't think there's a problem. 2s might concede there's a problem. You certainly might have a problem, but they don't have a problem and they're here to help you. And 7s will agree that there is a problem, but it doesn't really involve them because they are fine. The competency group, as they're called, are the ones who put feelings aside. So a 3 might say, okay, well, there's an efficient solution to this. We just need to get to work and figure out what it is. 1s will say, we can solve this. Let's just be sensible, mature adults. And 5s will say, there is certainly things to think about here. Give me a moment. I need to analyze. I need to figure it out. And then the reactive group are the 4s and 6s and 8s, who react strongly emotionally and need some kind of emotional response from others. So a 6 might need to let off steam from the pressure or express their anxiety about it. An 8 might need to share how angry they are, and a 4 might need to share how hurt they feel. In the case of every disappointment, it is true that if we are going to move on from it, all of us need to do all of the things. We all need to process our feelings about it. We all need to find a silver lining. And we all need to figure out what the next step is to take. However, we all start in a different place. And most of us are wired to do one of those things first, before we could even contemplate the other two. And sometimes we think one will do, and we don't worry about the others. So, for example, I am one of those who needs to know how we're going to fix the problem before I can stop to think about how I might feel about it, or why it's not that bad after all. When things don't go the way I plan or the way I expect, my first step is to say, okay, what do we do now? And because that's my first step in every disappointment, I can feel impatient with those who are not hopping on board to find the solution and instead are reacting emotionally or trying to find reasons why it'll be okay in the end. It can even compound my disappointment because it feels like my coping mechanism, okay, let's figure it out, is being hampered by these people who are not helping me figure it out. Imagine my surprise when I learned that these people who were causing me problems were not actually capable of hopping on board with my solutions until they had done their first steps. And that by moving quickly to a solution, I was compounding their disappointment because I could not share their emotion about it, or I could not help them reframe the situation. Whether or not you care about the Enneagram, do you know how you cope with disappointment? When difficulties or obstacles cross your path, do you react with emotional realness? Do you need to find the positive? Or do you just need to know what the logical next step is to take? Do you know what you need to do first? And what about the people who live and are around you? Do you know whether they react in the same way? I wonder how much difference it would make in coping with the things in life we don't control, that life hands us. I wonder how much difference it would make to our coping together if we could be considerate of others around us and what they need in those moments, rather than focusing only on our first steps. Jesus said, love people as they need to be loved. The more we learn about ourselves, the more we can share with those close to us the ways that they can love us. The more we pay attention and listen to others, the more we can discern what they need from us. Rarely does loving someone else involve offering unsolicited advice, dismissing someone's feelings, sarcasm, or solving someone's problem for them. Unless, of course, they're in imminent physical danger. That's a different thing. But these things, offering unsolicited advice, dismissing feelings, responding with sarcasm, or trying to solve or fix someone else's problem, those are known as empathy busters for every type. Love people as they need to be loved. Now, just because we live in a cruel world doesn't mean there aren't signs of hope. Just a few days ago, Pope Francis found a moment of empathy. He offered an empathetic, caring, and heartfelt apology for the deplorable conditions of Roman Catholic Church and Canada's residential school system, following a week of talks with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis delegations. Love people the way they need to be loved. Recently, war reporter Monica Andrzejewska, I'm going to say, was in Irpin, Ukraine, when the city came under attack. And she saw a group of terrified locals attempting to escape. And she abandoned her camera, set aside her needs, and she used her vehicle to transport them out of the danger zone, many trips. And a volunteer Ukrainian soldier posted a photograph of her on social media saying, "Today, this fragile but desperate Polish reporter stopped reporting and personally rescued about 20 families from under a bridge." The reporter has dismissed attempts at recognition. I get a lot of really warm messages, including requests to be in the media and tell stories about it, she says. I'm sorry, no. I was doing what I had to do. There's no need to shine in the media. There's really nothing special here. Love people as they need to be loved. In this messy, mixed up world, may we learn to love each other. Amen.